I stay on top of all this stuff. Guideline changes that come every quarter, credit changes in scoring. A good lender keeps up on it. It's their job, to be a professional and know what's changing, how it's impacting their clients, and being able to give them the best advice possible.
So, hi, and welcome to Beyond the Paycheck. I'm Paula Christine. So last week we were talking with Marc, and while we were recording, we got into a pretty lengthy conversation. So I asked Marc if we could cut this in two. So this is part two of the conversation on getting ready for the home buying season.
The lender has their own eyes and ears on the home, and that is the appraiser. The appraisal is done for the lender only at the borrower's expense. The lender determines value of a home based on comparable sales and property condition to make sure that the property meets the minimum property standards for home financing. So the borrower always gets a copy of the appraisal as well during the loan process, but the appraisal is not for the borrower. It's for the lender. The lender is the one that is lending the money, right? We're trying to make sure that we're not lending to a property that is not in a financeable condition or is overvalued.
So let me ask you this. So let's say that you got the appraisal comes in that the home is worth $200,000, but yet I've agreed to pay $225,000.
Okay.
Would you approve that mortgage, or would I have to come up with the additional $25,000? If it doesn't, let's just say it doesn't appraise up.
You got to come up with the additional money if you're going to continue to go through with the transaction. The loan amount and loan to value is always based off of the lesser of purchase price or appraised value.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
Well, I bet you that happened a lot, though, in the last few years where people were in bidding wars.
Correct. It does happen. And if people have that capital to make it happen, then they do it. If they agree to it.
Can you, well, you might know the answer. I'm sure you do, but it might be a realtor question. Can you put that in your, what's that thing, purchase agreement, to say that if the home doesn't appraise up?
Yeah. So a lot of times, I believe it's called an escalation clause. And a lot of times they'll say, like, we will pay $10,000 over appraised value for the home, no higher than our original offer. So let's say you offer $225,000, it appraises at $215,000. You've already said you're coming with the extra $10,000, so you're buying it for $225,000. You buy it for $225,000, it appraises at $220,000. You're still buying it for $225,000. You're not buying it for $230,000. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's an escalation clause. And it's very common these days, especially because inventory is at a low. There are more buyers than there are homes for sale every year.
Right.
And so homes that are in desirable areas that are well maintained will attract multiple offers. So these escalation clauses are used to separate offers from each other. Plus a whole host of others.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So are we done with?
Yeah. So we're through the 4 C's: credit.
Okay.
Capacity.
Credit.
Capacity. So that's income and debt ratio. Capital, your source of funds for closing, and then the collateral, which is the house. So now what happens if the house comes back in the appraisal and everything's fine value-wise, but there was repairs that need to be done? Something was, I don't want to say overlooked in the home inspection because we never see the home inspection, but maybe the appraiser or the homeowner, the realtor didn't think that it was going to be that big of a deal, and so they didn't give us advance notice, and the appraiser goes out and they say, oh, geez, I looked up in the attic and there's mold up in the attic, or, there's, tuck pointing on the brick that needs to be done or whatever, right? So we will get an appraisal with a value subject to those repairs being completed. Those repairs need to be completed prior to closing in most instances.
Well, who completes that?
The seller, because
the homeowner, the seller does?
Yeah. And so sometimes you run into a problem. The seller's like, I'm not doing this. This is how I'm selling this house as is. I'm not doing a thing. You either want it or you don't. Right?
Okay.
So we're still at an impasse because the appraisal is subject to these repairs being done. We are not closing without these repairs either A, being done, or B, potentially switching to a renovation loan where you can roll the repairs into the loan.
I'd have to think about that situation, what I would do.
All depends on the extent of the repairs.
Yeah, I guess it does. It depends on what the repairs are. Or is it just a sign maybe you're not supposed to be buying that house and it's time to walk away?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But there are renovation loans where you can renovate a house, purchase a home as is, plus renovate a house all in the same loan. And it doesn't necessarily need to be for a home that is distressed or has repairs that need to be done. What happens if you've been looking in this neighborhood for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house and nothing? You're years looking, in this specific neighborhood. This is where you want to live. This is where you want to live. Well, the perfect house comes up, but it's 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, and you want 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. But the layout of the house will allow you to add another bath or a half bath, or convert the half bath to a full bath, and allow you to add that 4th bedroom. So that's a house that you can do a renovation loan on. Buy it as is, roll in the cost of the renovation, and you'll get what you want in the end.
You can do that all in the mortgage process.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Yeah. So if I find a house that I like, but yet I know that I need to make some changes to it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Another layer to the process. So the loan process takes a little bit longer to go through than it would in normal. The contract.
Do you have to have the renovations done in a certain period of time, or can you just?
No. Yeah. You have 6 months from the date of closing to complete the renovations. But the contractor who's doing the work has to be licensed and insured. And there's
I don't want to throw contractors under the bus here, but how contractors can be. Sometimes they don't finish on time. Not only materials, labor, that kind of stuff. What if they don't?
You can get an extension.
Okay.
For sure. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you can definitely get an extension.
Interesting.
But that's it.
Had I known that, I think I would have bought a house that I liked last year.
Oh boy.
I didn't know that one.
Oh boy.
My mortgage guru didn't tell me this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe. I always look at everything's a sign anyway, Mark. I was probably not meant to buy that house.
Oh, all right. Well, good.
So
I totally redeemed myself.
Okay, Mark. So what would you say is the bottom line about buying a house?
Have the right people on your team. From the realtor to the mortgage lender to the private home inspector. Make sure that you're working with people that you know, like, and trust, right? Those are the people we like to do business with. And not having the right people on your team can be disastrous, right? So that's really the bottom line, is ask questions, get answers, be educated, educate yourself, right? And work with people that either come highly recommended or that you've vetted through whatever process you're going to use.
Right. And if you're moving to it, I also think that when you're looking at a home, like for me, I'm looking at purchasing out, 30, 40 minutes from my house, that I'm currently at. So I don't really know that area. And I don't want to pick a realtor that's in my current area. I want to pick a realtor that's out there and work with them because they know the area better.
A lot of times they do, yes.
Yeah. Well, you would hope they do, since it's in their backyard.
Yeah. And
I think with a mortgage broker, of course I always refer you, but I think people need to be asking a lot of questions, because there's those big, large mortgage companies. You've got your banks that you can work with. I say, ask everybody who they worked with. Was it a smooth process? Did they do everything they said they can do? Are they reachable? I mean, the worst thing is that, you have a question and you can't get a hold of the mortgage brokers, which becomes very, very frustrating.
Correct. And so don't, don't fall in the trap of comparing lenders solely based off of interest rate. It's just like anything else. Like if you wanted to redo your bathroom or redo your kitchen and you meet with 3 or 4 different contractors and they put their estimates together, you're not going to go with the highest one. You're probably not going to go with the lowest one. You're going to go with somebody that is in the middle. And so it's not always about the lowest interest rate. Because if that communication is bad or somebody misleads you and really you don't get approved in the end, what good was that low interest rate to begin with?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's, being, that I've owned 3 or 4 houses already and working with different mortgage brokers and then meeting people on the street. I remember when I met this one guy who said, "Oh, you should get one of these interest only mortgages." And I listened to what he had to say and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, and this was referred to from somebody who I loved, valued, and trusted this guy. And I was like, I don't think you have my best interest at heart. I think you have your own book it.
Yeah.
Your pocket's interest at heart. And I'm glad I didn't do it because that was right about when all the mortgage issues started happening. But
708.
Yeah. So prior to that, a year or 2 before that. But yeah, so I mean, you really, you need to talk with the mortgage broker. You need to talk with your realtor and then verify what they're saying by talking to other people and your family members and making sure that makes sense.
Yeah. Ooh, speaking of that,
What?
let me go back to the credit thing because this is a question we get a lot.
Okay.
All right. So you apply with a mortgage lender and you allow them to pull your credit. And then you get referred to somebody else, or you don't like that person and you go someplace else and they have to pull your credit, right? Because the credit report is not transferable. So the question we get is that going to hurt my credit score if I have my credit pulled for a mortgage a second time? All of the credit bureaus have what's called a shopping window, especially for large purchases like automobiles, recreational vehicles that are pretty large, costly, and homes.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you have a credit pulled within 45 days of the original credit report for the same purpose, so a mortgage pre-approval, only that first credit pull by that first lender is going to impact your score. Any credit pulls by other lenders for that same purpose is not going to impact the score. That doesn't mean you're going to have the same score with every lender because other things could be reporting to your credit, but that second inquiry for a mortgage is not what's impacting your credit score.
Oh, speaking of that, what did you tell me to do
We're going to talk
last
about
week?
that here as well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you're having your credit pulled for the same purpose within 45 days of the original credit pull, the subsequent pulls will not impact your score. Now, credit bureaus are businesses. They need to generate revenue. One of the ways they generate revenue is by selling credit trigger data to other mortgage lenders. So if I pull your credit, you apply with me today, I pull your credit, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion are selling your contact information to a whole host of other lenders. You may start getting calls within 10 minutes of me pulling your credit report, and the calls may not stop for days. And the people that call are unscrupulous. They will tell you that they're with the lender that pulled the credit report, but they're really not. They'll tell you, hey, if you did a Google search of that lender, you're going to find all kinds of bad reviews. Whatever it takes to try and steal that deal, they will do. So there is a way to opt out of that nightmare because it truly is a nightmare. So the credit bureaus have put together a website. It is optoutprescreen.com. It is basically a do not solicit list for credit trigger leads for 5 years. So you go to optoutprescreen.com, fill out the form to electronically opt out for 5 years, and do that before you allow your mortgage lender to pull your credit. Once you opt out, it's going to take 3, 5, 7 business days for it to really take hold. So I'm having this conversation with people when they're initially referred to me, so I can have them opt out before I pull credit, especially those that are trying to get pre-approved and they don't have a house in mind, and so we can wait that extra week. For the ones that found a home, I need to make an offer, offers are due by 6 o'clock today type of thing. Well, I mean, at that point, it kind of is what it is.
Speaking of that, when you just said that it takes 6 to 7 days and you could do that with people who are waiting to get pre-approved, how long does the pre-approval process take?
It shouldn't take very long. So the pre-qual should really only take a day or less, right? Depending on how busy the lender is, right? The pre-approval process of getting it underwritten, it all depends on how thorough and expeditious you are in submitting that documentation that needs to go along with your application. I can only speak to my company and how long it takes us, but once I have the proper documentation to submit it within 2-3 days.
Okay.
Because the underwriter.
Okay, so if you're thinking about buying a house, you should ultimately start looking for a mortgage broker. Maybe if you're thinking about in the spring now.
Yeah.
And then going through that whole blocking or the blockout or whatever that was called, and then opt out, and then the pre-approval process, so that when you are ready, you have everything ready to go.
Correct. And so the documents that we collect from the borrower, like pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements, all have a expiration date. They're only good for so long before they need to be updated. Same with the credit report. And so when we pull credit, that credit report is good for a mortgage for 120 days. You must close on your mortgage. No, 4 months. You must close on your mortgage within that 120 days, or a new credit report is going to need to get pulled.
Okay.
So spring, doing it now, you're into mid-May for an expiration on a credit report.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, you guys just have too many rules in your industry.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? I stay on top of all this stuff. Guideline changes that come every quarter, credit changes in scoring. A good lender keeps up on it. It's their job, to be a professional and know what's changing, how it's impacting, their clients, and being able to give them the best advice possible. So, again, having the right people on your team.
So if somebody wants to work with you, how do they get a hold of you?
So I am
perfect segue there, Mark, by the way.
In metropolitan Detroit. I can be found a few different ways. My website, thatmortgagebanker.com. Pretty simple. Locally, by cell phone, 248-379-6749. And then email is my first initial, last name @rossmortgage.com. You'll type this up, right?
Yeah, that'll all be in the show notes. Don't worry. People are driving while they're listening or walking. They don't have pen and paper to write this shit.
100%.
This stuff down.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right, yeah.
I just said the bad word. Can you work with people in other states?
I can.
So, Mark, I always love talking to you, and I appreciate you very much. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can reach me at paulachristine.com, or you can check out my website at paulachristine.com. Thanks again, Mark.